Generation Roblox, How Players Built a Digital World. Chapter 1. Blocks Before the World. If you open Roblox today, it feels endless. A spinning carousel of worlds, neon racing tracks, pirate islands, haunted towers, cozy roleplay towns where nights stretch on forever under pixelated stars. Avatars stream past in a blur of color. Knights, astronauts, fashion icons in glittering jackets, dragons wearing sunglasses. Somewhere, a player is building a new game. Somewhere else, a different player is discovering Roblox for the first time. It's noisy, fast, crowded, but it didn't start that way. Before all the millions of players, before the avatars and the oofs, before the name Roblox even existed, there was just an idea. What if anyone, especially kids, could build their own world? Long before that idea had a name, a boy sat at a table staring at a small pile of plastic blocks. He'd been told to clean them up. Instead, he was studying them. If you stack a tower 10 bricks high, how easy is it to knock over? If you push from the side, how far does it fall? If you build a bridge, how many bricks can it hold? The boy's name was David, and he didn't just want to play with the blocks. He wanted to understand them. Every nudge, every wobble, every collapse was a tiny experiment. He didn't know it yet, but he was training himself to see the world in terms of forces and rules. Gravity tugging down, friction holding tight, momentum carrying motion forward. He loved games. But even more, he loved the invisible logic that made games feel real. Years later, that way of thinking would help him build a universe of digital blocks. For now, though, he was just a kid whose tower had fallen over again. He picked up the bricks, smiled, and started rebuilding. As David grew up, the toys changed, but the curiosity stayed. The plastic blocks gave way to textbooks about physics. Simple puzzles became math problems. The family table became a desk with a chunky computer humming on top. Inside that gray box, David discovered a new kind of world. One made not of plastic, but of lines of code. Code had its own rules. Like gravity and friction, it obeyed logic. If you gave the computer the right instructions, it would do exactly what you told it to do. It could draw shapes, move objects, calculate trajectories. It could simulate the real world, or it could invent its own. David started writing programs, experimenting the way he once had with his bricks. What if the computer could show how a ball falls? What if you could change gravity itself with a single number? What if you could slow time down or speed it up? No longer limited by plastic and wood, his experiments moved into a space where anything was possible. And he discovered something important. People loved playing with simulations. During the 1990s, David worked on educational software, tools that let students explore physics by changing variables and watching what happened on screen. You could tweak gravity, erase friction, and see objects slide forever. You could angle a ramp differently and watch a ball soar further. You could build machines and watch them work or fail. These programs weren't games exactly, but they were playful. Kids learned by building and breaking, by trying and failing. They weren't just reading about physics, they were interacting with it. And in that gap between learning and play, between experiment and game, something began to form in David's mind. What if you didn't just simulate physics for a classroom? What if you built an entire playground out of it? One day in an office cluttered with monitors, cables, and half-empty coffee cups, David met someone who would help turn that idea into reality. His name was Eric. Where David brought a passion for physics and simulations, Eric brought something equally important, a deep understanding of systems, infrastructure, and how to make complicated things feel simple. He had the kind of mind that could look at a rough experimental project and see a polished, working platform hidden inside it. They were different, but they shared the same spark. They believed in the power of letting people tinker. They believed that computers shouldn't just be about consuming content, they should be about creating it. And so, in that modest office, surrounded by humming computers and the soft clacking of keyboards, A partnership formed. They didn't know it yet, but the seed of Roblox had been planted. In the beginning, the platform was just a prototype that didn't even have its final name. It was basic, rough around the edges, not yet ready for the world, but it had something magical, a 3D space where little blocks obeyed real physics. You could stack them and watch them topple. You could attach them to hinges and spin them around. You could build towers, platforms, ramps, and machines. Then press a button and see everything come to life. The project went through names. For a time, one of them was Dynablocks, short for dynamic blocks. It sounded technical and a little awkward, the kind of name you pick when you're more focused on getting the software to work than on marketing. But inside that clumsy title was a clear vision. Blocks that weren't just static shapes on a screen. Blocks that could move, collide, bounce, and break. Blocks that felt alive. That early version of the platform had a tiny audience, a handful of testers, kids of friends and family, people who didn't know they were touching the earliest version of a global phenomenon. To them, it was just something new to play with, something that felt strangely alive. The results were immediate. The kids didn't behave like careful beta testers writing notes and feedback. They behaved like explorers. They built towers just to see if they could knock them down. They made absurd contraptions and laughed when everything exploded into chaos. They weren't politely impressed. They were delighted. And the adults in the room, David, Eric, and their small team, watched closely. Because in every tower, every crash, every experiment, they saw proof of something they'd only hoped was true. If you gave people the right tools, they would surprise you. Slowly, the code base grew. The team added more building parts, more behaviors, more ways for pieces to connect. They didn't want just a sandbox where you built a structure and looked at it. They wanted a living, breathing simulation where everything interacted. What if you could build a rocket that actually flew? What if you could build a car and drive it? What if players could stand on moving platforms as they swung and rotated? They weren't just adding features, they were expanding the laws of this new universe. Gravity, collision, joint constraints, motors, hinges. But there was another idea forming, one that went beyond physics. What if players didn't just build models? What if they could build games? To do that, physics wasn't enough. The world needed rules, game rules, the kind you can't see, but you feel when you play. When a coin disappears and your score goes up. When a door opens only after you find a hidden key. When a timer runs down and the music gets faster. Those rules live in code. So the team added scripting, first in rough experimental ways, then gradually more polished. A language that would let creators define behavior. When this happens, do that. If this variable reaches 0, end the round. When a player steps on this block, give them points. Most people would never see the code itself. They'd just experience the result, a world that reacts when you touch it. But for the creators willing to learn, scripting was a key, turning simple block towers into full-blown playgrounds with objectives, endings, and rewards. Bit by bit, the platform was changing from a physics toy into something much larger. There was still a problem, though, and it was bigger than code. If you're going to build a universe where anyone can create, where do you put it? In a single-player game installed on one computer, creations stay trapped. You can build something amazing, but the only way to share it is by physically moving files around. People might never see each other's worlds. David and Eric wanted something different. They imagined a shared space, a place on the internet where all of these creations could live together, where players could jump from one world to another, where a kid in one country could step into a game made by someone on the other side of the planet, where creation and community were deeply connected. That meant moving the platform online. It meant dealing with servers, networks, and all the messy realities of people trying to connect from different places with different devices. It meant designing not just a physics engine, but a whole ecosystem where accounts, friends, and games all connected. It was an enormous challenge, but hidden inside it was the heart of the future Roblox. Many creators, many games, one shared platform. To get there, though, the project needed a new identity. Dynablocks sounded like an engineering prototype, not the name of a world where millions of kids might one day play. It was time to rename the universe. Names matter. Say a name out loud enough times and it starts to carry weight. Roblox didn't exist yet. It was just an idea floating in the air, waiting to be discovered. The team brainstormed combinations, short words, long words, playful words, technical words. They needed something that sounded like building, but also like motion and character. Not just blocks, not just robots, something in between. Robot, blocks, blocks, Roblox. Short, punchy, a little strange at first, but it stuck. It sounded like a place where you could build mechanical contraptions, run around as a character and crash into things, where imagination had edges and corners you could stand on. The name was chosen. The domain was registered. Dynablocks had quietly transformed into Roblox. The early team was still small, a few people in a modest office working long hours on something invisible to the rest of the world. While most of the internet was busy with other trends, blogs, message boards, early social media, this little group was shaping a 3D playground that barely anyone knew existed. They had to solve problems one by one. How do you let someone sign up and pick a username? How do you let them join a game with their friends? How do you keep the worlds synchronized so that when one player knocks over a tower, everyone else sees it fall? It wasn't glamorous. Servers crashed, builds broke, features worked in theory, then misbehaved when real people tried them. But with each problem solved, Roblox got a little bit more real. And beyond the technical hurdles was something even more unpredictable: human behavior. You can test your physics engine 1,000 times, but you never truly know what will happen when you release it into the wild, when thousands of minds, each with their own ideas, collide inside the same system. The team was about to find out. Beta users trickled in. Some arrived because a friend told them. Others stumbled across a link on a small forum. A few found it simply by exploring the early internet, always on the lookout for something new and strange. Oh. They created accounts and chose usernames that mixed numbers, favorite animals, random words, and inside jokes. They customized their early blocky avatars. Then they stepped into their first Roblox places. At first, the worlds were simple: a flat green base plate, some scattered bricks, a few ramps to run up and down, maybe a loose pile of physics objects you could knock around. To modernize, it would look bare and awkward, like a half-finished construction site. But to those first players, it was different. They weren't just moving through a world designed by a faraway company. They were walking around the inside of someone's imagination, a place built by another player, just like them. The realization came quickly. Wait, I can build my own too? Roblox Studio, the building tool, was rough but powerful. It gave players a camera, a set of parts, and the ability to place, resize, color, and connect them. It was a toolbox with no instructions, and that was exactly the point. Some kids opened Studio and froze, overwhelmed by the emptiness of the blank base plate. Others leaned forward, eyes bright. They started dragging bricks into place, rotating them, stacking them. They made walls, platforms, towers, weird shapes that only made sense in their means. Then they hit play and watched their avatar step into the world they'd just constructed. They weren't just playing anymore. They were building. The first genres didn't come from a design document. Nobody sat down and said, "We will now invent the obby," or "We will create the tycoon genre." Instead, they emerged from experimentation. One creator stacked bricks in a straight line and added gaps, like a 3D platformer level, stripped down to its skeleton. Jump here. Don't fall there. If you make it to the end, you win. Other players loved it. Soon, obstacle courses, obbies, began to spread. Another creator thought, what if you earn money over time and use it to build your own base? That idea turned into early tycoon experiences where players started with almost nothing and gradually unlocked bigger and better structures. It wasn't polished, but it was compelling. Watching something grow because of your choices felt powerful. Still others built fighting arenas, racing tracks, mazes, and castles. Some projects were bug-ridden and fragile. Others were surprisingly smooth. All of them had one thing in common. They were made by players, not by a distant game studio. The Roblox team watched as their platform became something alive. They fixed bugs during the day and logged in at night to see what the community had done with the tools. New creations appeared daily. People found exploits, tricks, and creative solutions the developers had never considered. The plan was working, maybe even better than they'd expected. In those early days, the numbers were small, but the feeling was big. There were no massive conventions yet, no blockbuster headlines, no tidal wave of YouTube creators building careers around the platform. Just a small, growing group of players who had found something special, a place where they weren't just consumers of games, but makers of them. They invited friends. Check this out, I made a game. You made this? Yeah, want to help me build the next level? School computer labs, family PCs, and shared home desktops became portals. Kids who had once just installed games now opened Roblox Studio and started tinkering. They weren't always thinking in terms of learning to code or studying game design. They were thinking in terms of fun. I want to make a lava floor that kills you if you touch it. I want a button that gives you a magic sword. I want a secret room only my friends can get into. Every wish like that was a lesson in logic, scripting, and design disguised as play. Back at the office, David and Eric saw something that matched their earliest dream. Kids using digital building blocks to experiment, learn, and create, just like David had once done on the family table, except now the blocks were shared with the world. Yet, as promising as things looked, Roblox was still fragile. The company was small. The player base was modest. The technology had limits and rough edges. Servers could go down. Features could break unexpectedly. Competition in the wider world of games was fierce, and Roblox was still an odd little corner of the internet that most people hadn't heard about. The future was not guaranteed. Would the platform grow, or would it remain a niche curiosity? Would creators stick around or drift away to other games? Would parents trust this strange new world their kids were diving into? These questions hung in the air as lines of code were written, as features quietly shipped, as new places appeared in the game list one after another. Inside a few bedrooms and school computer rooms, though, something important was already happening. A kid was staying up too late, trying to fix a broken script. Another kid was sketching a level on paper during class, planning what to build when they got home. Somewhere, a player who'd never written a line of code before was staring in shock as their first simple script actually worked. A door had opened for them. In that sense, the heart of Roblox was already beating, even if the rest of the world couldn't hear it yet. If you look back at those early days now, the graphics appear dated, the interface is clunky, the game's simple. But history often looks that way. The first version of anything is small, awkward, and easy to underestimate. What mattered was not how Roblox looked. What mattered was what it allowed people to do. It gave kids tools normally reserved for professional developers. It treated them not as passive players, but as creators with something to say. It handed them building blocks, digital ones this time, and said, "Here, see what you can make." The rest, as we'll see, would be up to them. Because while the story of Roblox begins with David's experiments in physics and Eric's careful engineering, it doesn't stay there. Very soon it becomes the story of millions of players. Some who build, some who play, some who do both, all stepping into a world that didn't come from a single author's mind, but from countless imaginations stacked together like blocks. This is where our journey begins, with a simple idea, a new name, a handful of creators, and a platform that is just about to leave its small, experimental beginnings behind. The towers have been built. The blocks are in place. The physics engine is humming, waiting. In the next chapter, the world will find Roblox. And Roblox will discover just how big it can become. Chapter 2. When the world logged in. For years, Roblox had existed in quiet. Lines of code, internal builds, a handful of kids testing physics sandboxes that didn't even have a final name yet, a prototype called Dynablocks, then a project called Roblox, slowly taking shape. Then came the day when someone somewhere outside the office clicked sign up for the very first time. It was 2006. The internet was still young enough to feel like a frontier. Social networks were just beginning to form their webs. Most online games were made by big studios with glossy marketing and boxed copies in stores. The idea that a messy, blocky, user-generated world could compete with them sounded ambitious at best, foolish at worst. Roblox came out of beta and opened its gates to the public in early September of that year. There was no fireworks show, no spectacular marketing campaign. Just a site, a login screen, and a new universe quietly waiting on the other side of a play button. A kid somewhere, maybe in a bedroom, maybe at a school computer lab, typed in a username. A strange one, probably, mixed with numbers and favorite words. They chose a password, clicked through a few simple options, and landed on the homepage of a world that barely anyone knew existed. The page was simple: a logo, a list of places, a few buttons. No huge banner art, no cinematic trailers. But every place listed there was something special, a little world built by another player. The new user clicked one. The browser asked if it could run a small download. The player agreed. A client opened. A loading bar moved slowly across the screen. Then, in a burst of simple colors and edges, Roblox appeared. A flat green baseplate, a sky, a blocky avatar standing in the middle of it all. It didn't look like much, but the player pressed W, A, S, and D. The character moved. The camera spun around. Another player spawned nearby. They jumped, chatted, climbed a stack of blocks. Simple things, but electrifying. This wasn't just a web page. It was a place. And they weren't alone in it. Back in the office, David and Eric watched those numbers appear on their dashboards. Concurrent players, 3. Then 7. Then 15. It wasn't tens of thousands. It wasn't millions. It was barely even a classroom's worth of people. But each number represented someone, somewhere, stepping into their shared physics playground. The team picked one of their own test levels to offer as a starting point. It was called Crossroads. A simple battlefield made of brick platforms, towers, archways, and bridges suspended over an empty sky. Weapons lay scattered around: swords, rockets, slingshots. Nothing too complex. Just a place where you could run, jump, and knock things over. One day, something unexpected happened there. A group of players gathered in Crossroads. Around 20 of them all logged in at the same time. They began experimenting, not with the map itself, but with each other's avatars. They stacked on top of one another, balancing in precarious columns. They built contraptions on each other's shoulders. They turned their blocky bodies into moving platforms in a game that hadn't been explicitly designed for that. In that moment, something clicked. The developers had imagined physics simulations and building tools, but players were discovering new uses for the system, a kind of emergent play that came from giving people building blocks and then stepping back. Roblox wasn't just a place to play games. It was a place where people could invent new ways to play. Still, for Roblox to grow, it needed more than a fun physics sandbox. It needed a structure. The website evolved. Usernames turned into profiles. Profiles started showing friends, favorite games, and what you were currently playing. Messaging systems appeared, so players could talk outside of the games themselves. There were forums where creators traded tips, complained about bugs, and showed off their latest projects. The platform also needed something tricky: an economy. From the start, Roblox experimented with virtual money. They introduced two currencies: tickets, often called ticks, and Robux. Tickets were like the play money of the platform. You could earn them simply by logging in or by having other players visit your place. Robux, on the other hand, were more premium, tied to memberships and, eventually, real-world purchases. The idea was simple: play the game, earn some tickets. Make something popular or support the platform, earn or buy Robux. Use those currencies to customize your avatar, buy gear, or unlock special perks. The dual currency system had a hidden lesson built in. Time and creativity had value. If you made something that other people wanted to play, your account balance would quietly reflect it. Avatars themselves were transforming. At first, players were little more than colorful stacks of bricks with heads. Over time, they gained more personality, different colors, faces, and accessories. A simple hat could make you recognizable in a crowded server. A cool shirt or pair of pants could express your style even when the graphics were simple. Players wanted more ways to stand out. The team listened. They introduced clothing templates that players could draw on, turning blank shirts and pants into custom outfits. At first, these were just like any other asset that you could upload and share. But as the economy matured, something important changed. Players could start selling their creations. A new kind of Roblox citizen was born, the virtual fashion designer. These weren't companies. They weren't professional brands. They were kids. Sitting at home, opening up image editors, they sketched hoodies, jeans, armor sets, and costumes. They uploaded them as shirts and pants, set prices, and waited to see if anyone would buy them. When a sale notification popped up for the first time, when their digital clothing earned them real Robux, it felt like magic. They had turned imagination into currency. In 2007, the platform added something else that would shape its future, a membership program called Builders Club. Members gained a set of perks, the ability to create more places under their account, a daily Robux stipend, and the power to sell clothing and other creations without certain restrictions. In time, extra tiers appeared. Turbo Builders Club, Outrageous Builders Club, with bigger benefits. On the surface, it was just a subscription. Underneath it was a signal. Roblox was telling its most dedicated creators, "You're not just players, you're partners in building this universe." If a kid wanted to get serious about developing games, Builders Club felt like a badge, a quiet declaration. I'm not just here to play, I'm here to build. Some families saw it as an investment. Parents watched their children sink hours into Roblox Studio, learning to script in Lua, designing levels, debugging broken ideas. It wasn't the usual image of screen time. The screen had turned into a workshop. With membership perks helping to support them, a new class of creators emerged, ones who treated their Roblox projects as long-term experiments, polishing and updating them over months and years instead of abandoning them after a weekend. That commitment paid off. The games themselves, still called Places by many, began to grow in both scale and ambition. Early on, Roblox Corporation had made and promoted some of its own games, paintball arenas, haunted houses, model train rides, and other small experiences designed to show what was possible. But a few years after launch, the company stepped back from making official games, choosing instead to focus entirely on the platform. Users would be the ones to fill the game list. By then, they were more than ready. Obstacle courses, or obbies, got longer, harder, and more imaginative. Some featured lava jumps and disappearing platforms. Others were themed around temples, space stations, or candy worlds. They became a rite of passage. Could you beat the hardest obby your friends knew? Tycoon games matured from basic earn money, build a base loops into elaborate progression systems with factories, cities, theme parks, and armies. The satisfaction of watching a tiny empire grow over time attracted players who weren't just looking for quick action. They wanted long-term goals. There were role-play towns where players pretended to go to school, run restaurants, raise families, or work jobs that didn't pay in real money, but did pay in social status and imaginative fun. There were building sandboxes, battle arenas, survival challenges, and peaceful hangout spots. Some games barely worked. Others were astonishingly clever. Roblox's front page, Once a sparse list became crowded. Games rose and fell, new hits appeared. The early classics, titles that regulars all recognized, had play counts in the thousands, then the millions. For the kids who made them, those numbers felt surreal. Behind every popular game was a creator watching their analytics like a heartbeat monitor. They checked concurrent players. They watched the chat logs. Wow. They saw which parts of the map gathered clusters of avatars and which parts remained empty. They adjusted difficulty, fixed bugs, and added secrets. They learned, often without realizing it, the fundamentals of game design, user experience, and systems thinking. They were playtesting live with real audiences, something even some professional studios struggled to do. Some creators started forming small teams. A scripter, a builder, an artist for clothing and icons. They talked over voice calls, shared files, and coordinated updates. They were teenagers and sometimes younger, running miniature studios out of their bedrooms. Occasionally, one of them would become a celebrity inside the world of Roblox. Usernames like Stickmaster Luke and others accumulated millions of plays across their games, proving that an individual creator on the platform could attract an audience comparable to that of smaller commercial games. For players, these creators were like local legends. They weren't distant names on a box. You could bump into them in their own game and say hi. As the platform grew, so did the need to keep it safe. From the very beginning, Roblox had been aimed primarily at children and teens. That brought a responsibility to moderate chat, filter content, and prevent the worst of the internet from crashing into a space that was supposed to feel like a playground. The moderation systems were never perfect. No platforms are, but they evolved constantly. Text filters watched for profanity and personal information. Players could report inappropriate behavior. Moderators reviewed content, taking games and assets down when they violated rules. To some kids, this felt annoying. Why couldn't they just say whatever they wanted? To parents, it was a relief. They could see their children running around in brightly colored worlds, chatting, playing, making friends. The fact that Roblox took safety seriously, even if that meant bans, content removals, and strict filters, was one of the reasons that the platform slowly gained parental trust over time. That trust would be tested again and again in later years, especially as Roblox's popularity exploded. But in these early days, the foundations were being laid, not just for creativity, but for a culture of trying, however imperfectly, to keep that creativity safe. By the early 2010s, the numbers told a clear story. Roblox's player base wasn't just growing, it was accelerating. Monthly active users climbed into the millions. By around 2011, the platform was reaching several million players each month and positioning itself as one of the major online destinations for kids' entertainment. The games themselves were evolving rapidly. Several titles crossed the milestone of 1 million plays, with some surpassing 10 million. The front page was starting to look like a chart of hits rather than a random jumble. Certain genres, obbies, tycoons, role plays, simulators, stood out as pillars of the ecosystem. Players who had joined in 2007 or 2008 were now experienced veterans by 2011, with deep knowledge of the tools and tricks needed to make compelling experiences. The platform was growing up alongside them. Roblox itself started hosting events, seasonal hunts, special rewards, and limited time items that drew players into specific games. These events stitched the community together, turning individual experiences into parts of a shared calendar. Then came a milestone that pushed that sense of community into the real world. In August 2011, Roblox held its first in-person convention in San Francisco, the Roblox Rally. For most players, Roblox was something that lived inside a browser window. The idea that you could step into a physical space and see other fans face to face felt surreal. Those who attended suddenly found themselves surrounded by people who understood obscure references, game names, creator nicknames, inside jokes from specific maps. There were Quanda sessions, demonstrations, and chances to meet the developers behind the platform. Oh. It was proof that Roblox wasn't just a website, it was a culture. The rally was small compared to the giant conventions of the wider gaming world, but it didn't need to be huge. For the teenagers and kids who convinced their parents to bring them, it was confirmation that what they'd been doing online, building, scripting, playing, mattered. They weren't just wasting time on the computer. They were part of something that reached all the way from their bedrooms to a conference hall in another city. Meanwhile, technology kept moving. Internet speeds improved. More households gained reliable access to broadband. Computers became more capable. Laptops replaced bulky desktops. Eventually, phones and tablets would join the party, though that shift was still ahead. Roblox's team worked to keep up. They optimized servers, refined the client, and adjusted the engine to handle more complex worlds. They adapted to new operating systems, improved performance, and fought the eternal battle against lag. At every step, they faced a tricky balance. Add enough features to keep creators excited, but not so much complexity that new players feel lost. Over and over again, they leaned on one core idea. Give people tools, let them surprise you. Looking back, those pre-explosion years, roughly from launch in 2006 through the early 2010s, feel like the childhood of Roblox itself. The platform had a name, a community, and a clear identity. A place where user-generated games lived side by side, powered by a shared physics engine and a scripting language that anyone motivated enough could learn. Oh. It had an economy shaped by tickets and Robux, memberships like Builders Club, and user-created clothing that turned players into entrepreneurs. It had early celebrities, conventions, and a growing reputation among kids as that game where you can make games. What it didn't yet have was the global spotlight. That would come later. For now, Roblox was still something you discovered through a friend, a sibling, or a stray link on a kid-friendly website. It was still possible to join a server and recognize the same players day after day. The ecosystem was vibrant but intimate compared to what it would become. The seeds of the future, though, were already firmly in the ground. Player creators had learned to build full worlds. Some had started to earn real money. Kids who once logged in just to play now talked about updating my game or fixing my script. The platform had survived its fragile early years. It had proven that its core idea worked. Give players a powerful set of tools, and they'll build more than you ever could alone. Soon, the wider world would begin to notice. In the next chapter, Roblox will step into its turbulent adolescence, scaling up to millions more players, expanding onto new platforms, weathering outages and challenges, and slowly transforming from a niche kids site into a global giant of user-generated worlds. Chapter 3. From desktops to everywhere. For a long time, Roblox lived mostly in the same place, on the family computer. The ritual was familiar. You'd ask if you could use the PC. You'd wait your turn. You'd log in, maybe with a sticky note beside the monitor reminding you of your password. You'd click a game, wait through the loading, and finally drop into some blocky world your friend had told you about at school. It worked. It was fun. But the world outside that glowing monitor was changing. Phones were getting smarter. Tablets were starting to appear around the house. Kids were no longer tied to a single computer. They were gaming in the backseat of cars, on couches, at kitchen tables, on the bus. If Roblox wanted to grow up, it had to escape the desktop. It had to learn to live everywhere. Inside the Roblox office, this was both exciting and terrifying. On a PC, you had a keyboard, a mouse, plenty of processing power most of the time, and a big screen. On mobile, you had none of that. Instead, you had touch controls, smaller displays, weaker hardware, and battery limits. Everything had to be rethought. How do you move your avatar with your thumb? How do you jump, interact, and rotate the camera without a mouse? How do you keep physics simulations smooth on a device that fits in your pocket? The engine had grown up in a world of desktops. Now it had to be optimized, trimmed, and sometimes redesigned to run on tiny chips without losing the essence of what made Roblox feel like Roblox. There were meetings about performance, network usage, input controls, and user interface. Buttons were resized, rearranged, simplified. Graphics were tuned so that even an older phone could run a busy game with lots of players. It wasn't perfect. Some games were too heavy, some devices too weak. But a clear goal emerged: the same universe, no matter what screen you opened it on. The first mobile release arrived. At first, it was more limited than the desktop experience. Not every game ran well. Controls took getting used to. But something crucial happened. Kids who had never had their own computer suddenly had their own portal into Roblox. A hand-me-down phone or a family tablet became enough. You could be in the back seat of a car, the world rushing by outside the window, while inside your screen, your avatar sprinted across an obby or built a tycoon empire. You could be on the couch while someone else used the main computer and still join your friends online. Roblox had become not just a game you played at a desk, it was a place you carried in your pocket. This changed everything. The number of players grew not just because the platform was getting better, but because it was suddenly accessible wherever there was a decent internet connection. Countries where home PCs were rare, but phones were common, started to join in greater numbers. Roblox's map of users began to blur across borders. If the early years had felt like one neighborhood finding Roblox, the mobile era felt like opening the doors to entire cities. With more players came more creators. Many of them had first discovered Roblox on mobile, then, curious about how these worlds were made, went hunting for Roblox Studio on a computer. The pattern became common. Play on phone. Get hooked on a game. Wonder, how did they make this? Find Studio. Start building. Studio remained a tool best suited for desktops and laptops. It was still a proper development environment with panels, scripting windows, object explorers, hierarchies, and properties. But the ideas that flowed through it increasingly started on mobile screens, where kids had first fallen in love with someone else's game. Roblox had split its identity into two complementary halves. The play half, which could happen almost anywhere, and the build half, which still lived primarily where keyboards and larger screens made serious creation possible. Between them, traffic flowed constantly. During this time, Roblox's internal culture shifted as well. In the earliest days, it was mostly about getting the platform stable, fighting crashes, adding essential features, and making sure players could even log in and join games. Now, with a growing and increasingly global community, the team had to learn a new kind of discipline: live operations. A server outage wasn't just an internal problem anymore. If Roblox went down for an hour, tens of thousands of kids were abruptly cut off from their worlds. If it went down for longer, parents heard about it. Social media noticed. Communities paused mid-event, mid-roleplay, mid-obby. Every bug could ripple through millions of sessions. Engineers began to think in terms of uptime, monitoring, and redundancy. They needed better tools to detect issues early and fix them before they turned into full-scale problems. They improved deployment systems, tested changes in smaller regions first, and slowly built muscles for running a platform that never really slept. The world had logged in. Now it expected Roblox to always be there. Back on the player side, something else was happening. Children and teenagers had started uploading videos of their gameplay to the internet. At first, it was simple: a recording of someone running around an obstacle course, maybe a short clip of a funny glitch, a tour of a cool base, the sound of a kid laughing hysterically into a cheap microphone as chaos unfolded on screen. These early creators didn't all have fancy editing tools or plans to grow a channel. They were just sharing moments. But viewers came anyway. And they clicked out of curiosity, they stayed for the personalities, they subscribed, waited for new videos, and then made their own. A feedback loop formed. A kid discovers Roblox through a video. They download the game, suddenly they start playing. Then they start recording their own videos. Someone else discovers Roblox through them. In time, some of these video makers turned into full-blown influencers. content creators whose personalities, jokes, and playstyles attracted massive audiences. Their channels were filled with thumbnails of wide-eyed avatars, dramatic titles, and screenshots of wild in-game moments. They didn't just play Roblox. They translated it. They showed viewers which games were fun, which updates were worth checking out, which events to join. They turned obscure little creations into overnight hits by simply choosing to feature them. For developers, this was a new kind of power. A shout out from a popular creator could steer thousands of players into their game, sometimes within minutes. Popular games started to optimize not just for good gameplay, but for good moments. Spectacular jumps, funny failures, surprising twists that looked great on camera. Roblox wasn't just a platform anymore. It was an ecosystem sprawling across content, community, and culture. Behind the scenes, Roblox Corporation recognized something profound. Some of their users were making games that attracted millions of visits. Those games were keeping players on the platform, driving engagement, and even encouraging purchases. The traditional idea of developers and audience had blurred. Many of the most important games running on Roblox weren't made by employees. They were made by kids and young adults scattered across the globe. The platform had to reflect that reality. It wasn't enough just to give creators tools and say, "Good luck." There had to be a way for them to be rewarded, not just with Robux to spend in-game, but with something that could reach beyond the screen. A bold step followed. Roblox introduced a system that allowed creators to exchange the Robux they earned from their games and assets for real-world currency, as long as they met certain criteria and followed rules set by the platform. Suddenly, a dream that had once sounded almost impossible became real. You could build a virtual game as a teenager and eventually get paid for it. Not a token amount. Not just in the form of exposure. Actual money. For some, it was pocket change. For others, especially those whose games achieved massive success, it became enough to pay for college tuition, support their families, or launch small independent studios. The news spread quickly through developer circles. Parents who had once said, "You're wasting time on that game," began to pause when their children showed them dashboards full of statistics and Robux earnings. Conversations at dinner changed from log off and go to bed to, "Okay, but show me what you're working on." Roblox had just crossed a line. It was no longer simply a hobby space. It was a real platform where young developers could start careers. Money changed things. In some ways, it made everything feel bigger and more serious. Teams that had been loosely organized groups of friends began to formalize. They created names for their studios, divided responsibilities, set schedules. They planned updates like small companies. They implemented game passes, cosmetic items, and microtransactions designed to entice players without driving them away. Some developers studied analytics more closely. They tracked how long players stayed before quitting. They tested different game loops, sometimes tweaking the timing and rewards to be more engaging. They watched what other successful games did and adapted. With these shifts came new challenges. How do you keep a game fair when there are in-game purchases? How do you avoid creating experiences that feel exploitative, especially when your audience is young? How do you keep your community happy while still earning enough to sustain development? Roblox itself had to respond with guidelines, policies, and tools to help developers navigate these questions. There were terms of service, rules about advertising and monetization, and safety standards. Not every developer followed them perfectly. Not every game struck the right balance. But the platform pushed steadily towards a more structured, sustainable ecosystem. The old image of Roblox as that simple block game was fading. In its place, a more complex reality was emerging. A vast marketplace of user-generated experiences, some of them lighthearted experiments, others serious long-term projects with full-time teams behind them. As the platform matured, so did the avatars. For many early players, the classic blocky characters, the so-called R6 avatars, were iconic. simple limbs, squared off torsos, and the timeless charm of a figure that looked like it had stepped out of a toy bin. But as hardware improved and expectations shifted, players began asking for more flexibility. They wanted smoother animations. They wanted to bend elbows and knees. They wanted to dance, pose, and move in ways that felt more alive while still keeping that Roblox feel. The answer was a more detailed avatar rig with additional joints, often referred to as R15. Arms and legs were broken into multiple segments. Animations became more expressive. Characters could lean, gesture, and perform more complex movements. At first, the change sparked debates. Some loved the new look and possibilities. Others insisted the old blocky style was a part of Roblox's soul and should never disappear. In the end, the platform did what it often did best. It made room for both. Players could choose styles, mix and match outfits, and slowly watch the avatar system expand to include more body shapes, accessories, and emotes. Identity in Roblox had always been about more than just wins and scores. Now, it was more visually flexible than ever. You could be a classic block, a slim figure in a hoodie, a glowing knight in angular armor, or a mashup of half a dozen styles. You could change daily if you liked. The avatar wasn't just a vehicle for gameplay. It was how you showed up in this digital society. Events grew along with everything else. Seasonal celebrations brought special items, hats, wings, weapons, costumes that were only obtainable for a limited time. There were scavenger hunts spanning multiple games. There were crossover events with outside brands, where Roblox worlds temporarily filled with themed quests, characters, and rewards. These events had a double effect. They gave players reasons to keep logging in, checking what was new, and talking with friends about where to get the rarest items. They also turned developers into event hosts. Participating games had to integrate event mechanics into their worlds. That meant writing special scripts, designing limited time levels, and coordinating with Roblox's event team. For some creators, these events became important milestones, opportunities to get a burst of attention and introduce new players to their game. A growing chunk of Roblox life now happened according to a shared calendar. Holiday events, summer events, special collaborations, anniversaries. The platform felt less like a static list of games and more like a living city with a schedule of festivals. In that city, developers were not just shop owners with permanent addresses. Sometimes they were the ones putting on the fireworks. Of course, not everything went smoothly. Growth always brings friction. There were outages when servers couldn't handle the load, leading to frustrated players staring at error messages and social feeds full of jokes, complaints, and memes about Roblox being down. There were controversies over game content that pushed too far past the platform's rules. Moderation had to stretch further, hiring more staff, building smarter tools, and rethinking policies. There were concerns from parents, educators, and critics about screen time, in-game purchases, and online interactions. Articles and reports debated whether Roblox was a harmless creative outlet, a potential hazard, or something in between. For the company and the community, this pressure wasn't pleasant. But it was also proof of scale. Nobody worries loudly about something tiny and irrelevant. People argued about Roblox because it mattered to their kids, their classrooms, their free time, their wallets. It had woven itself into daily life for millions. Inside the company, each problem became a call to adapt. Improve safety features. Refine reporting tools. Add parental controls. Clarify monetization rules. Upgrade infrastructure. Every step was a reminder that they weren't just hosting a game. They were hosting a vast, unpredictable society built out of imagination and code. Private servers and social features continued to evolve. Friends lists became more important. Players could jump into games together, follow each other into sessions, and use party systems to coordinate. Private or VIP servers allowed groups to rent their own instance of a game, turning public worlds into more controlled, intimate spaces where a handful of friends could mess around without strangers. For some players, these smaller pockets became the real heart of Roblox. A roleplay group might meet in the same private server every evening. A friend circle could practice hobbies without worrying about random trolls. Developers could use private servers to test updates with trusted players before pushing changes out to everyone. As social tools improved, Roblox stopped feeling like a random mass of disconnected players and more like a network of overlapping friend groups, clans, studios, and communities. The platform was enormous, but your experience of it might revolve around just a few games and a few dozen people you really knew. The magic was that all of those small circles still lived in the same universe. You could always step outside your usual bubble and try something new. By the time Roblox finished this adolescence period, many things were true all at once. It was still at its core a blocky sandbox of user-generated games. You could log in, open some random obby, and get the same basic joy of jumping from platform to platform as players had years earlier. But layered on top of that simple foundation was something much more complex. A global audience playing it across PCs, phones, tablets, and consoles. A developer community that ranged from curious kids to organized studios. An economy where virtual assets and real-world finances intersected. A cultural footprint that extended into video platforms, fan art, music, events, and even educational programs. The platform had survived its awkward early years. It had learned how to run on almost any device. It had figured out how to pay its creators. It had endured outages, controversies, and rapid growth. Most importantly, it had proven something that few had believed at the beginning. Yes, you can build a massively popular gaming universe out of other people's imagination. You can hand the tools to the community and let them take the wheel. And they'll drive further than you ever thought possible. If the first chapter of Roblox's story was about a physics-obsessed kid who wanted others to learn by tinkering, if the second chapter was about turning that dream into a living online platform with its first loyal fans, then this chapter is about Roblox learning to inhabit the wider world. On phones and tablets, on video platforms and social feeds, in the lives, schedules, and ambitions of millions of kids and young developers. Yet, as big as it had become, there were still transformations ahead that nobody could fully predict. A global pandemic was on the horizon that would push online platforms into a new role. The idea of Roblox as a company would collide with the world of finance and public markets. The platform would be forced to confront what it meant not just to entertain, but to host concerts, classes, meetings, and entire social lives. All of that belonged to the later chapters. For now, Roblox stood at the edge of its next leap. No longer a small experiment, not yet the full cultural giant it would become. The blocks were in place. The world was online. And the stage was quietly set for Roblox to step out of the niche and into the global spotlight. Chapter 4, The Year the World Came Home. By the late 2010s, Roblox had grown into a busy city of games. You could log in at almost any hour and find crowded obbies, booming tycoons, bustling roleplay towns, and developers quietly testing their next update on a nearly empty server. Mobile players jumped in from buses and couches. PC players stayed up too late fixing scripts and farming coins. Some creators were starting to treat their games like full-time jobs. Roblox was big, but it was still, to many people, just something kids played after school. Then, all at once, after school disappeared. And Roblox stopped being just a place to play. It became a place to be. Far away from screens in the physical world, something invisible began to spread. The news started softly. A few headlines, a thing happening somewhere else. Then it grew louder. Schools closed, offices emptied. Streets quieted, entire cities, entire countries were told to stay home. For kids, the world shrank almost overnight. No classrooms. No playgrounds. No birthday parties at bowling alleys or trampoline parks. Just walls, windows, and the steady hum of Wi-Fi. Parents scrambled to figure out remote work. Teachers scrambled to learn video calls. Everyone tried to make sense of a life lived through rectangles. Computer screens, laptop screens, phone screens, and somewhere inside all those rectangles, Roblox waited. One day, a kid who normally logged onto Roblox for an hour after homework suddenly had an entire day with nowhere to go. School was now a video chat. Homework was a file in a folder. Friends were tiny boxes on a screen that flickered, lagged, and went silent when microphones glitched. The sense of being together, even on a call, felt thin. But Roblox? Roblox was still there, full of color and noise. So they logged in. Not just after school, but in the middle of the day, during breaks, after their last video class, late into the evening when the world outside felt too quiet. They weren't alone. Player numbers surged. Kids who had drifted away came back. Kids who had never tried Roblox before suddenly needed somewhere to meet friends that wasn't just another grid of webcams. Brothers and sisters, cousins, neighbors, stuck inside their own houses all found the same portal. It wasn't a conscious decision made by any one person. But slowly, day by day, Roblox transformed from the game you play when you're done with real life into the place where real life happens now. Inside Roblox's offices, now scattered as employees worked from their homes too, the numbers told the story with brutal clarity. More players. More hours. Logged. More games. Launched. More. Private servers purchased so small groups could stick together. Charts that had once risen gently like hills suddenly turned into cliff faces. Success on that scale is never simple. On the one hand, it was a validation of everything Roblox had spent years building. On the other, it was a technical and human emergency. Servers strained, systems were pushed to their limit. Developers and engineers found themselves racing to keep everything running for a player base that had just become deeply dependent on the platform. Downtime stopped being a minor annoyance. For some kids, if Roblox went offline, that meant their only shared playground vanished. So the teams dug in. They upgraded infrastructure. They monitored performance more intensely. They rewrote systems that couldn't handle the sudden pressure. They tested, deployed, rolled back, tried again. The world outside was facing one kind of crisis. Inside this digital universe, engineers fought a different, quieter one, keeping millions of kids connected to their friends. Players began using Roblox for things it had never officially promised to replace. Birthday parties moved into obby lobbies and theme park games. Instead of candles on a cake, there were firework particles and confetti scripts. Instead of everyone sitting around a table, kids met as avatars at the top of a tower or on a Ferris wheel or on the deck of a pirate ship as they spammed chat with messages like HBD and threw virtual objects at the birthday kid. Grandparents who had barely touched games before made accounts, often with usernames chosen clumsily, letters and numbers jammed together. They stumbled through camera controls, but with patient guidance from grandkids, learned to walk, jump, and wave. Awkward at first, then easier. They joined family hangouts in cozy role-play houses, listening to kids excitedly drag them around to see their rooms and pets and favorite in-game items. Some friend groups met every day at the same time in the same game, like a digital park bench. School clubs that had once gathered in real classrooms now used Roblox as their meeting hall. They explored educational games, checked out virtual science experiments, or just played tag in brightly colored environments while talking over voice chat on another app. For many kids, the question, "Where do you want to meet?" had a simple answer: Roblox. Developers felt the change too. Traffic to their games spiked. Some creators watched their dashboards in disbelief as concurrent player counts doubled, then tripled. Games that had once held a few hundred people at a time now needed to handle thousands. Servers that had idled quietly during school hours were suddenly full all day. With increased traffic came higher earnings. For developers who already monetized their games, the difference was immediate. In-game purchases rose. Game passes sold faster. Cosmetic items, boosts, VIP perks, everything saw more action. Some young developers realized mid-pandemic that their side project had turned into the main thing. They juggled remote classes with bug fixes. They tuned difficulty, adjusted progression, and scheduled updates to keep their suddenly expanded communities engaged. Discord servers, social media accounts, and in-game announcements turned into lifelines between creator and players. The stakes were higher now. A mistake didn't just mean a few upset comments. It could mean thousands of kids stuck at home seeing their favorite digital escape break. The pressure was real. So was the opportunity. As Roblox swelled, the outside world began to talk about it in a new way. It wasn't just a game anymore. People started using a word that had been floating around technology circles for years, but had never quite found a home: metaverse. The idea was simple to say and complicated to define: a shared, persistent virtual space where people could work, play, create, and socialize. Not just jump into self-contained matches and then disappear, but live out an ongoing digital life. For some, the metaverse sounded like science fiction. For others, it sounded like marketing. But for millions of kids logging into Roblox every day, it didn't sound like anything at all. They weren't debating the term. They were just living it. To them, Roblox was more than a library of games. It was where they talked to friends, showed off new outfits, relaxed in favorite hangout worlds, voted on what to play next, celebrated small personal victories, and processed big, scary news from the real world. The rest of the world was suddenly trying to invent language to describe what Roblox players had grown up doing. Roblox itself leaned into this new perception. It began hosting experiences that pushed beyond traditional ideas of gameplay, concerts, for example. At first, they sounded almost impossible. How do you host a live performance inside a user-generated world built on top of a physics engine, originally designed for blocky toys? But the pieces were there. Avatars to stand in for an audience. Scripting to control lights, effects, and transitions. Animation systems to bring performers to life. Servers to hold thousands of concurrent viewers across many instances. Teams inside Roblox and external partners worked together to build concert spaces, giant virtual stages, arenas, and fantastical landscapes where music and visuals merged. Timed performances used pre-recorded vocals combined with real-time interaction, crowd emotes, mini-games, camera moves. For fans, the experience was unlike anything they'd seen. They could stand on a floating platform as the sky tore open in colors, jump in sync with the beat, or ride a virtual roller coaster while the song played. They could attend the same concert multiple times and get slightly different angles, moments, and interactions. They could wear outfits themed around the event and take screenshots with friends. These weren't concerts replacing real-world shows. They were something else entirely. Events that could only exist because physics, code, and imagination could ignore the limitations of real stages and gravity. And they gave Roblox a new identity. It wasn't just a platform for games. It was becoming a stage. At the same time, education quietly crept in. Teachers who had once banned games in the classroom now found themselves looking for ways to make remote learning tolerable, maybe even inspiring. Some discovered that Roblox's tools could be used not only for entertainment, but for instruction. Students could build models of ecosystems, historical landmarks, or physics experiments, and then walk through them together, discussing what they saw. Coding clubs used Roblox Studio to teach basic programming logic, turning "when player touches this block, do something" into a kind of interactive puzzle. Some school projects moved into Roblox worlds: virtual museums built by students, math games designed by small teams, digital dioramas that you could visit instead of just viewing as a poster. There were limitations and challenges, of course. Not every school could adopt these ideas. Not every student had the right device or connection. But the fact that Roblox was even in the conversation mentioned next to video conferencing and learning management systems, was staggering for anyone who remembered the early days of simple block towers and basic physics demos. What had started as a toy for experimenting with forces and collisions had looped back around to its roots, learning by doing, but now on a planetary scale. While all this happened, Roblox the company took a step that marked its own passage into adulthood. It went public. For years, Roblox had been funded like many growing tech companies. Private investments, internal revenue, careful planning. But eventually, it chose to list its shares on a stock exchange, transforming from a private company into a public one, whose value was measured moment by moment on market screens. For players, this didn't change the feel of jumping into an obby or dressing an avatar. But for the world outside, it sent a clear signal. What had once been seen as that kid's building game was now a major player in the global tech and entertainment landscape. Analysts pored over numbers, user growth, hours of engagement, developer payouts. Journalists wrote about the idea of a platform where most of the content was made by users, and where some of those users were teenagers earning more than many adults. Investors debated whether Roblox represented the future of entertainment or just one bright star in a crowded digital sky. Inside the community, reactions were mixed. Some developers felt proud to be part of something that had reached that level. Others worried that increased pressure from investors might change the platform's priorities. Players mostly shrugged and went back to arguing about which game to play next. But something had shifted. Roblox wasn't just answering to its players and creators anymore. It was answering to the broader world. With visibility came scrutiny. As Roblox grew, so did concerns. Commentators asked uncomfortable questions. If kids are making games that earn serious money, how do you protect them from being exploited? If players can purchase items and currency, how do you ensure fair design, especially for young audiences who may not fully grasp the value of money? If millions of children socialize on your platform, how do you keep them safe from harassment, scams, and inappropriate content? Roblox had been working on safety and moderation for years, but scale made everything harder. Chat filters had to handle more languages, more slang, more creative attempts to dodge restrictions. Moderators had to review not just text and images, but 3D games, audio, and eventually even voice chat. Reporting systems had to be accessible and responsive so users could flag problems quickly. New tools appeared. Parental controls, account restrictions, clear indicators of when and where purchases were happening. Policies evolved. Creators were given guidelines not just about what they could build, but how they should handle monetization, advertising, and player data. No system is perfect. Reports of problems still surfaced. Debates about what Roblox should allow or disallow continued. Parents, teachers, and players themselves argued about where the line should be drawn between freedom to create and the need to protect. The tension wasn't a sign of failure. It was a sign that Roblox had become something too important to ignore. Nobody debates the rules of a playground that doesn't matter. Amid all that noise, technical challenges, financial milestones, safety debates, the quiet, personal stories continued. Two kids in different countries logged in every day at the same time. Their time zones offset, meeting in the same game to talk about school, family, and dreams for the future. A young developer used earnings from their hit game to pay for college, studying computer science with the strange feeling that they were already, in a way, experienced. A shy child who struggled with in-person conversations found confidence when speaking through an avatar, discovering that they could lead groups, host games, and be the center of attention in ways they'd never dared in a physical classroom. A developer's parent, once worried that too much Roblox would be a problem, watched their child negotiate contracts, manage a small team, and present design ideas with a professionalism far beyond their years. These stories didn't make headlines, but they were the heartbeats inside the larger statistics. When people talked about the metaverse, about user-generated content, about digital economies, they were, whether they knew it or not, talking about the lives of individuals who had grown up in a world where building and sharing virtual experiences was normal. By the time the worst of the global lockdowns eased, Roblox had permanently changed shape. Players didn't log off and say, well, that was for the pandemic. Back to normal now. For many, Roblox was simply part of normal. It was where they'd spent some of their loneliest months and some of their most joyful discoveries. It was where they'd seen their first virtual concert, hosted their first digital birthday party, launched their first game, or met their first friend from another country. Returning to physical schools and parks didn't erase those memories. Instead, Roblox became one layer in a multi-layered life. You could bike to a real playground and, that evening, jump into a digital one. You could sit in a classroom with classmates you'd once only seen as avatars. You could wear a shirt in the real life that matched your main outfit in the game. The borders between online and offline blurred further. Roblox had not replaced the real world, but it had become a part of it. Looking back, the pandemic years became a kind of stress test, not just of Roblox's servers and infrastructure, but of the platform's core idea. Could a digital space really function as a place for genuine connection, creativity, and opportunity when the physical world went quiet? The answer for millions of players was yes. They learned that friendship could survive distance. They learned that building virtual worlds could be more than a hobby. They learned that games could host concerts, classes, and communities just as real as any club or camp. Roblox, in turn, learned something too. It learned that it wasn't just a toy or a website or an app. It was a stage, a workshop, a hangout, a classroom, a marketplace. It was a platform with obligations, not just to entertain, but to nurture, protect, and respect the people who called it home. If the early chapters of Roblox's story were about invention and survival, this chapter is about recognition. The world noticed. Investors, educators, journalists, and other companies turned their eyes toward the sprawling, blocky universe and saw not just a pastime, but a glimpse of how digital life could work. Young developers noticed too. They realized that the skills they'd learned in studio, logic, design, collaboration, storytelling, could carry them into futures in programming, art, business, and more. Players noticed in a quieter way. They realized that some of their most important memories now lived on servers in distant data centers. The first time they beat an impossible obby with a friend watching, the late-night conversations on a virtual rooftop, the moment they stood in the crowd of a digital concert and felt impossibly together. The block towers from the earliest days had grown so tall that they brushed against clouds no one had imagined at the start. Yet even here, on this high ledge of global success, Roblox's story was not finished. There were new questions waiting. What happens when a generation raised in Roblox grows up? How will the platform change as technology moves forward? Augmented reality, virtual reality, new devices not yet invented. Can Roblox remain a place where anyone can create while also meeting the responsibilities that come with size and influence? Those questions belong to the next part of the story. For now, we leave Roblox at a moment of transformation, no longer just a game, not yet whatever it is destined to become, but standing firmly as a digital world that helped millions of people feel less alone when the real one turned inward. The world had come home. And many of those homes had a familiar shortcut on the screen, a red and white logo, a square hole in the middle, a gateway to a universe built piece by piece out of imagination and code. Chapter 5, Generation Roblox. On a school morning in the mid-2020s, a familiar routine unfolds in millions of homes. An alarm goes off. A sleepy hand reaches for a phone. Before messages, before homework apps, before the news, one icon gets tapped first. Roblox. The login is automatic now, remembered by the device. A friends list pops up, little green dots glowing from different time zones. Somewhere it's night. Somewhere else it's afternoon. But here, right now, before the day begins, there's just enough time to check something important. Has anyone joined the game yet? Did last night's update work? Did the new shirt sell? For a growing generation, Roblox is not just a game they play, it's the background of their childhood. If you could look at Roblox from above, the way you might look down on Earth from orbit, you'd see waves of activity sweeping across the globe. When one region is waking up, another is heading to bed. On dashboards in Roblox's offices, the numbers plot this rhythm. Tens of millions of daily active users, climbing steadily year after year. By 2024, the platform is drawing somewhere around 80 to 90 million people a day, and hundreds of millions each month. They log in from phones, tablets, laptops, consoles, in cities and villages, in places where Roblox has been a household word for years, and in places where it's just now gaining a foothold. They don't all see the same thing when they arrive. One child opens a cozy roleplay town where they and their friends act out everyday life. Another jumps straight into an intense shooter or competitive arena. A third teleports into the dashboard of Roblox Studio, eyes focused not on playing, but on building. The same platform, thousands of different uses. Roblox isn't one game. It's a language a generation has learned to speak. For many of them, that language starts with appearance. In the earliest days, a Roblox avatar was simple. A blocky body, a basic outfit, maybe a hat if you were lucky. Customization existed, but within narrow limits. Style was something you implied more than displayed. Over time, those limits dissolved. The avatar system expanded to support more body types, more joints, more expressive animations. Then came a breakthrough: layered clothing. Instead of a flat texture painted on the body, clothes became true 3D garments that could be worn on top of each other, jackets over hoodies over shirts, adapting to different avatar shapes with clever algorithms. What sounds technical on paper feels personal in practice. A player can now stack a denim jacket over a graphic tee, add an oversized hoodie, slip on boots that actually wrap around their avatar's legs, and finish the look with accessories that react to movement. It's not just choosing a skin, it's getting dressed. Digital fashion houses notice. Brands built entirely in pixels, names that didn't exist in the physical fashion world, open virtual storefronts, collaborating with creators, selling outfits that might never work in reality but look perfect in Roblox's stylized universe. Even companies known for real-world clothing launch their own collections in the avatar shop, letting players wear their logos and designs without ever stepping into a physical store. For some teens, the question, "What are you wearing today?" applies twice. Once in the mirror, once on the screen. And the answer on the screen might matter more. Appearance is one layer of identity, voice is another. For years, Roblox conversations happened mostly through text, flying chat bubbles and scrolling windows full of misspellings, emojis, and abbreviations. It was enough to plan the next move or joke about a failed jump, but not enough to sound like yourself. Then, in the early 2020s, Roblox rolled out spatial voice chat for older players. Now your avatar doesn't just stand there silently. It talks. Voice is tied to proximity. You hear people near your character more clearly, and distant players fade into the background. Two friends can lean their avatars against a wall and whisper about their next strategy, while a noisy crowd shouts near the stage of a virtual concert. The change is subtle but profound. Laughter comes through not as LOL repeated in chat, but as actual laughter. Frustration, excitement, surprise, they all tint the air around your avatar, turning a cluster of characters into a group of people you can hear. Of course, voice also adds responsibilities. Moderation systems have to grow more sophisticated. Players get tools to mute, block, and report. Age gates and permissions exist for a reason. Not every experience supports voice, and not every player wants it. But for those who do, Roblox feels less like a silent movie and more like a conversation. It brings the digital world one step closer to the unplanned, overlapping chatter of a school hallway, or a crowded playground, minus the need to be in the same physical place. Meanwhile, the kinds of spaces people are talking in keep expanding. Once, nearly every popular Roblox experience could be easily described as a game. There were goals, win conditions, scores. You might race, fight, solve puzzles, or survive disasters. Now, a growing portion of the platform defies that simple label. You enter a world that looks like a futuristic city plaza. There are interactive billboards, mini games tucked into side alleys, and a giant central pavilion where new items are showcased. It's branded with the logo of a company you recognize from TV or the mall: a sneaker brand, a fast food chain, a toy line, a fashion house. You aren't exactly playing in the old sense. You're wandering, trying out activities, collecting cosmetics tied to the brand, taking screenshots with friends in front of stylized virtual backdrops. This is a new kind of marketing. Not a 30-second advertisement you're forced to watch, but an optional place you can choose to visit. The brand hopes that by letting you hang out in its world, you'll form a deeper connection to its image. Music labels and artists continue to experiment as well. They build dedicated concert spaces and interactive listening parties, turning album launches into events where fans don't just hit play, they move, dance, and participate. Virtual stages rise out of oceans, crumble into pixels, turn upside down, or burst into galaxies, all synchronized with songs that blast through speakers and headphones. Education sneaks in through the same channels. Museums sponsor interactive exhibitions. Science organizations help craft games about ecosystems or space travel. Historical simulations let classes visit reconstructed cities or events, exploring with avatars instead of field trip buses. Roblox starts using a different word more often: experiences. Not just games, experiences. It's a small shift in vocabulary that hints at a bigger ambition. Underneath all of this, fashion, voice, brand activations, concerts, classrooms, there's a question that would have sounded outrageous 20 years ago. Can you build an economy out of people making things inside a game engine? Roblox's answer is now a documented, measured, heavily analyzed yes. Creators earn Robux when players buy game passes, special items, private servers, and developer-made products. Those Robux can be spent entirely within the platform, or if certain requirements are met, exchanged for real-world currency through the Developer Exchange Program, DevEx. The numbers are no longer small. By the mid-2020s, Roblox reports that creators have earned billions of dollars collectively since the program began, with nearly $1 billion in a single year and over $1 billion more in just the next. Thousands of developers worldwide are making enough to treat Roblox as a primary job, not just a side hobby. The company even publishes economic reports estimating how many full-time job equivalents this creator ecosystem represents, and how much it contributes, indirectly, to national economies through taxes and spending. Behind each number is a person. A teenager who started tinkering with simple hobbies and ended up running a small studio with teammates in multiple countries. A college student paying tuition with earnings from a simulator they launched in high school. A group of friends who split tasks: one scripts, one builds, one handles social media, and treat their Roblox world like a startup, complete with planning meetings and long-term roadmaps. Some of the most successful teams bring in sums that rival or exceed traditional indie games, turning virtual roller coasters, pet collection adventures, or role-play neighborhoods into serious businesses. For a child hearing, you can grow up to be anything. Roblox developer is now a real, if unusual, option. Yet not everyone wants to be a full-time developer, and that's part of Roblox's strength. The ladder of participation has many rungs. At the bottom is pure play. You log in, join a game, and have fun. No building, no scripting, no commerce. Just you and your friends running around. A step up is creativity without code. Using in-game editors, pre-built tools, and simple interfaces, players decorate houses, design outfits, and customize spaces. They might never open studio, but they still express themselves. Higher up are the semi-serious creators, people who open studio, follow tutorials, copy sample scripts, and piece together their own worlds. They might publish a small game that never breaks 100 concurrent players, but they learn logic, debugging, and the thrill of hosting something other people can visit. At the top are those who commit fully, mastering scripting, data persistence, user interface design, progression systems, analytics, marketing. Their games, or experiences, as the official language now calls them, become recognizable names on the platform's front page. Roblox doesn't demand that everyone climb to the top. It just makes sure the ladder exists. As the ecosystem grows, Roblox's responsibilities grow with it. A platform used by tens of millions of young people every day cannot simply be a neutral conduit for whatever its users decide to build. Governments and regulators around the world pay more attention to children's online safety, data privacy, and exposure to advertising and monetization practices. Questions multiply. How do you verify age in a way that respects privacy but still enforces rules? How do you design in-game purchases so they're transparent and fair? How do you prevent scams, exploitative experiences, and content that violates local laws? Different countries answer these questions differently. Some pass sweeping online safety laws that treat platforms like Roblox as quasi-social networks. Others discuss or impose age-based restrictions, pushing companies to prove that they are actively moderating and protecting younger users. Platforms respond with more parental controls, more granular content ratings, clearer spending limits, and better reporting tools. Inside Roblox, trust and safety teams work alongside engineers and designers, constantly updating filters, reviewing reports, and banning accounts or removing content that crosses guidelines. Voice, text, images, 3D worlds. Every new medium adds another layer of complexity. It's a constant, imperfect process. The line between freedom to create and duty of care is not always obvious. But the stakes are clear. When your platform becomes a part of childhood, you inherit part of childhood's protection. Despite the risks and responsibilities, the creative energy inside Roblox keeps compounding. Tools improve. Studio gets new features, better terrain, more realistic lighting, more flexible scripting APIs, more powerful interfaces for handling data and UI. Documentation grows deeper. Tutorials, courses, and community-made guides proliferate, often recorded by developers who were once learners themselves. Artificial intelligence begins to whisper at the edges. Early experiments suggest that one day, creators might describe a scene or a mechanic in words and have code or 3D layouts generated as a starting point. Maybe a novice will drag a few blocks into place, and an assistant will suggest how to connect them or propose scripts to power them. The goal isn't to replace human creativity. It's to lower the barrier between imagination and execution even further. If, in the beginning, Roblox asked, what if kids could build with digital blocks? The new question becomes, what if anyone could build, regardless of their technical skill, by simply saying what they want and refining it? The details are still emerging. But for a generation already comfortable switching between apps, devices, and realities, the idea of co-creating with AI inside Roblox doesn't sound like science fiction. It sounds like the next update. Beyond creation, the way people access Roblox is evolving too. Virtual reality headsets and augmented reality glasses are still maturing, but the trend is clear. Screens are getting closer to our eyes, and digital overlays are creeping into everyday life. Roblox experiments with VR support and explores how its worlds might feel when you're not just looking at them, but turning your head inside them, reaching out with tracked hands instead of thumbsticks. Elsewhere, augmented reality hints at a future where Roblox experiences might spill out of their current boundaries. Imagine placing a small, interactive diorama from your favorite game onto your living room table, or seeing your avatar mirrored beside you through AR glasses, wearing the same jacket in both realities. None of it replaces the basic joy of sitting at a screen, fingers on keys, friends' voices in your ears. It just widens the canvas. For Generation Roblox, the question is less, will this happen? And more, how normal will it feel when it does? All of this, the fashion, voice, brand worlds, concerts, education, economy, regulation, new devices, can make Roblox sound like a giant machine, a system of numbers and policies and technologies. But the core of the story is still small moments. A child somewhere is staring at a blank baseplate in studio, hesitating before placing their first block. Will anyone play this? Is it worth trying? They drag in a part, change its color, and hit play. Their avatar spawns beside the new object. They jump on it. It works. Hours later, they've built a rudimentary level. They invite a friend, the friend joins, laughs, and immediately finds a way to break the design. They fix it together, talking late into the night. In another country, a group of teenagers celebrate because their game just passed 1,000 concurrent players for the first time. They've watched tutorials, failed dozens of times, restarted projects more than once. Now the screen shows a number that proves they've made something people love. They take screenshots, post them in their server, and open a shared document titled Next Update Plans. Somewhere else, a college student writes on a scholarship application that they learned programming in Roblox Studio and attaches a link to a game with millions of visits as proof. And every day, millions of kids who will never write a line of code still step into these worlds, experience them, and shape them by playing, reacting, and sharing. They are all part of Generation Roblox. If you look at the arc of Roblox's history, from a physics toy on a clunky computer to a global platform humming with activity, the pattern is clear. Each era adds a layer. The early years gave it a physics-driven soul and a commitment to user creation. The first wave of growth proved that kids would build entire genres if given the tools. The mobile and YouTube age turned it into a cultural ecosystem, not just a website. The pandemic years stress-tested it as a social lifeline. The mid-2020s solidified it as an economy, a stage for brands and artists, a laboratory for education, and a career path for thousands. What comes next will depend on forces no single company can fully control. New technologies, new laws, new competitors, new cultural shifts. But one thing is already certain. There is now a generation growing up for whom the sentence, "I built a game when I was 12 and people I'd never met played it," is normal. A generation for whom online identity is layered like clothing, where voice and text and motion all blend into a single expression. A generation for whom going to a concert might mean logging into a server, and hanging out with friends might mean teleporting between 3 different virtual neighborhoods in an evening. They will carry that normalcy with them into whatever they do next, whether they keep building in Roblox, move on to other platforms, or create entirely new ones inspired by the first digital worlds they called home. Somewhere, right now, one of them is staring at a script that won't work, wondering if they should keep going. When they fix it, and they will, they'll join a long line of builders, reaching back to a boy with a pile of plastic blocks on a kitchen table, trying to understand why towers fall and how worlds can be made. The tools have changed. The scale has changed, but the feeling is the same. Roblox's story is, and has always been, the story of people who believe that the best way to understand a world is to build one. Chapter 6. Worlds Inside a World. Every story about Roblox looks enormous from far away. Hundreds of millions of users dot billions of hours, played dot charts and headlines, and big words like platform and metaverse. But if you zoom in, the way you zoom a camera down onto one tiny avatar in a crowded server, the story changes. It stops being about numbers and starts being about people. Because Roblox isn't just one history. It's millions of small histories, all running side by side. On a gray afternoon in a small apartment above a noisy street, a girl named Maya opens Roblox Studio. Her laptop is old. Its fan sputters to life as if protesting it, but it runs. On the screen, a 3D scene that only half exists. A few floating platforms, a rough skybox, some placeholder blocks arranged in a shape that might one day become a town square. Maya has a notebook beside her, pages covered in scribbles, level layouts, arrowed diagrams, lists of features with boxes to tick off. At the top of one page, underlined 3 times, is the name of her project. She clicks into a script window. Red error messages glare back at her from the output panel. The game doesn't work yet. The shop won't open. The currency doesn't save between sessions. The enemies sometimes fall through the floor. She could close the laptop and go play someone else's finished game. That would be easier. But she thinks about the first time she realized Roblox games were player-made. That moment when a friend casually said, "Oh yeah, I built this," and her brain dropped the word player and replaced it with creator. She wants that feeling. So she takes a breath, scrolls up, and starts reading her own code line by line. Across an ocean in a quiet suburb, 3 friends are arguing in voice chat. Not angrily, just the familiar overlapping chaos of people who've known each other long enough to debate anything. "What do you mean you're already in the lobby?" "I told you we're playing the new one today." "No, that game is dead. Nobody plays it." Their avatars stand on a digital sidewalk while the argument continues. Behind them, the rest of the server whirls by. Players sprinting, jumping, emoting, spawning in and out, with a tiny whoosh of teleport scripts firing. Finally, someone hits the join button. The others follow. The space around them dissolves in a blur of UI transitions and loading screens. A new environment fades in, bright colors, music, and opening cutscene. The friends talk over it, skipping tutorial texts they've technically never read, relying instead on instinct and each other. They've done this 100 times. Together, they've watched entire genres rise and fall. They've played early versions of games that later turned into platform-defining hits. They've seen small developers suddenly explode in popularity, watched new mechanics get copied into a dozen other titles within weeks. But none of that matters as much as the simple ritual. School, homework, dinner, then log in and ask, "Where are we going tonight?" Sometimes they grind progression in a favorite simulator. Sometimes they just wander from server to server, treating Roblox like a carnival with endless booths. The games change, the ritual doesn't. In a classroom not far from Maya's apartment, a teacher stands in front of a projector screen filled with blocky characters. A handful of students are unimpressed. "Isn't that just Roblox?" someone asks, as if the word just can shrink the whole universe down to something unimportant. "Yes," the teacher says, "and we're going to use it today." They explain the assignment. In small groups, students will design a simple interactive scene representing a historical event they've been studying. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be fully fun in the traditional sense. The point is to build a place where you can walk around and see history from inside it. Some students perk up. They know Studio already. They know how to insert parts, change materials, add light sources, import images. They don't know much scripting, but one kid in each group usually does, or thinks they can figure it out. Others are nervous. They've only ever been players, not builders. The idea of creating something for other people, even just classmates, to walk around in feels intimidating. The teacher circulates between desks, answering questions that ping-pong between history. Would this building really have looked like this? And design. How do we make the doors open when you get near them? By the end of class, nobody has a finished masterpiece. But they've placed walls and trees and NPCs. They've argued about where to put signs and how to guide visitors. They've seen their avatar stand inside a scene they made with their own hands. The homework isn't just reading a chapter anymore. It's building one. Back in her apartment, Maya solves her first bug of the day. It's a small thing, just a variable defined in the wrong scope. But when she hits play, the game does something it didn't do before. The shop opens and prices display correctly. She grins. She imagines one of the three friends from across the ocean walking into the shop. They don't know her name. They don't know what her room looks like or how loud the street is outside her window. They just know that the shop works and that the sword they buy feels good to swing. That's enough. She adds a check mark to her notebook beside Shop UI. One box down. Dozens to go. On a different floor of a different building in a different city, someone else stares at a screen filled not with studio but with graphs and logs. They work at Roblox itself. Their job isn't glamorous to players. They rarely get shouted out in YouTube videos. There's no fan art of the systems they maintain. But when a server cluster starts throwing errors, their work suddenly becomes the most important thing in the world for millions of kids who don't even know their name. They see an alert. Something is wrong in one region. Latency is climbing. Disconnects are creeping up. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to be a yellow light on the dashboard. They dig in. Is it a networking issue? A bad deployment? A spike from some newly popular experience that's hitting an unexpected bottleneck? They trace connections, roll back a recent change, shift traffic, watch the numbers. The yellow fades back toward green. Somewhere, a child who is rubber banding around an obby suddenly moves smoothly again. Somewhere else, a developer's game stops throwing mysterious errors and goes back to quietly earning them a trickle of Robux. The engineer takes a sip of now cold coffee and files a ticket to examine the root cause later. On another tab, a chat window with coworkers is full of discussions about future updates, new APIs for developers, improvements to avatar systems, better tools for moderation. Roblox, from their perspective, is a living machine that never fully stops. It's never done. In another home, a parent sits at a kitchen table with a laptop open to a news article about Roblox. They've heard of it, of course. Their child talks about it constantly. They've seen avatars dancing on the screen, heard laughter and frustration spill from the other room. They've also heard scary stories, warnings about online safety, headlines about risk and regulation. The article is balanced but cautious. It talks about creativity and opportunity, but also about in-game purchases and the importance of supervision. It recommends setting up parental controls, talking openly about spending, and keeping an eye on who kids are talking to. The parent looks up as their child walks in, tablet in hand. "Can I play Roblox?" the kid asks. There's a pause. "I want to see what you're playing," the parent says. At first, the child is wary. Roblox is their space, their domain. But they agree, and soon they're side by side on the couch. The kid launches a favorite role-play game and starts rushing through explanations so fast, the parent can barely keep up. "This is the house I built, and this is my dog, and over here is where we hang out, and those people over there are, I don't know them. They just show up sometimes. Oh, and this is the store where you can buy stuff, but I know I'm not allowed to spend without asking." Questions follow. What happens when you click that? Do you know everyone you talk to? What do you like about this game? The child answers, half distracted by play. But honestly, the parent listens. They don't understand everything. The avatars move too fast. The screen is crowded, but they begin to see what their child sees in it. A social space, a creative outlet, a way to feel in control of something in a world where kids control very little. They don't walk away thinking it's perfect. They walk away thinking, this matters to my kids, so I have to learn how it works. That's the beginning of a different kind of safety, not just filters and settings, but shared understanding. Back online, Maya's game finally reaches a point where she dares to hit publish. It's not finished, not really. There are features missing. The map is smaller than she dreamed. Some of the art is placeholder, but if she waits for it to be perfect, she'll never release it at all. She writes a short description, chooses a thumbnail, and hits the button. Her game goes live. At first, nobody plays. And of course they don't. The platform is huge. The front page is full of giants that have been gathering players for years. A random discovery is possible, but rare. She posts the link in a small developer group. She sends it to a few friends. Slowly, the visits counter ticks up. 1, 3, 7, 14. She logs into her own game and sees something astonishing. Other avatars moving around, jumping, testing the shop, falling off cliffs, figuring out puzzles she designed. They type in chat. How do you get the key? Oh, wow, this is cool. Wait, the boss is hard, lol. Their usernames are unfamiliar. Their presence is not. She jots down notes as she watches. The boss fight is too long, dot. The tutorial isn't clear enough, dot. People like the movement system more than she expected. A list grows in her notebook titled Patch 1.1. The history of Roblox is now touching the history of one small game that exists only because she decided to try. Meanwhile, somewhere else on the platform, a different kind of creator is at work. Not a scripter, not a builder, an artist. Their canvas is a template for layered clothing, their tools a drawing program, a stylus, a sense of style shaped by both fashion magazines and hours spent scrolling through the avatar shop. They sketch a jacket, not a realistic one, a dream jacket, one that would cost a fortune in real life, with embroidery, glowing trim, and a cut that seems to shift with the light. In Roblox, practicality doesn't matter. Comfort doesn't matter. Only the look does. They export, test, adjust. On an avatar, the jacket moves smoothly, wrapping around arms and torso no matter the body type. It doesn't clip. It doesn't distort. It looks good. They list it for sale. Days later, they open their creator dashboard and see that people have bought it. Not thousands, not yet, but enough that they feel a thrill. Someone somewhere decided that this digital jacket was worth their Robux. They take a screenshot of the sales graph and send it to a friend with a message. It's working. Next to Maya's game on some server, there might be a player wearing that jacket. She'll never know the artist. The artist will never know her. But their work overlaps on a stranger's avatar, gliding effortlessly across a game that neither of them could have built alone. Roblox is full of these invisible collaborations. In a quiet corner of the internet, a community forum thread grows longer. It's a place where developers talk among themselves, sharing tips, complaining about bugs, debating changes to the platform. The thread's topic is simple. What was your first game? People answer. Some describe clumsy obbies with floating bricks and impossible jumps. Others talk about free models pasted haphazardly into base plates. A few link to old, now broken places that still exist on their accounts, dusty but preserved. They laugh at their own early work. Then someone asks, what's the game you're proudest of now? The answers change. Now, there are screenshots of detailed cityscapes, complex UI, carefully balanced progression systems. There are stories about working with team members from other time zones, about handling updates for millions of players, about failures along the way, games that never took off, features that backfired, rewrites that hurt to make but had to be done. Reading through the thread, you can trace the growth of Roblox itself. The first games, small, rough, joyful. The current ones, ambitious, polished, interconnected. Between them lies years of personal development, not just of the platform's tools, but of the people who wield them. Not every story is triumphant. Some developers burn out. They chase trends, trying to copy what's popular instead of finding their own voice. They worry constantly about retention, monetization, analytics. They watch numbers instead of games. The line between fun project and stressful job blurs until they can't see it anymore. Some players get overwhelmed. The sheer volume of choice can feel paralyzing. There are always new games, new updates, new events. Friends move on to other experiences, other platforms. What was once cozy can feel crowded. Some parents and teachers struggle to keep up. They want to support creativity without losing control. They want to respect the importance of digital spaces without letting them swallow everything else. They succeed some days and fail others. Roblox is not a utopia. It's a world with all the messiness that implies. But one of its quiet strengths is that it remembers where it came from simple experiments in physics and building, from the idea that given tools and space, people, especially young people, will make more than anyone expects. When the platform feels too big, too commercial, too complicated, that original idea is still accessible. Open Studio dot insert a part dot, change its color dot, hit play. There it is again, the first spark. At the end of a long day, the three friends from earlier log off. Their avatars vanish from the last server of the night. Their voices fade from the call. Their screens go dark. In one house, a parent peeks in and sees a sleeping child who an hour earlier was sprinting through neon-lit corridors. In another, a student shuts their laptop and opens a textbook, brain still half in the game world as they read about some distant century. In Maya's room, the light from the street outside carves stripes across her notebook. She flips to a clean page and writes in big letters, "Next game." She doesn't know it yet, but something she learned in this project, the way she structures her code, the way she watches players move through levels, the way she balances challenge and reward, will carry into that one and the one after, and maybe into a job she hasn't even imagined. Well, somewhere, another young creator is just now discovering Studio for the first time, starting their own timeline. Somewhere else, a player is about to click a game thumbnail that will quietly become a big part of their childhood. Roblox contains all of these beginnings. If you step back once more and look at the platform from high above, the statistics return. Player counts, revenue charts, engagement metrics, regional growth. They matter. They tell one kind of story. But they are not the whole story. The rest of it lives in rooms and classrooms and coffee shops and office buildings, in late nights and early mornings, in the small decisions to try, to build, to fix one more bug, to play one more round, to listen, to learn. For the generation growing up with Roblox, these decisions are shaping more than entertainment. They're shaping how people think about creativity, ownership, identity, and community in a world where so much of life happens through screens. One day, many of these players and creators will leave Roblox behind. They'll outgrow it or move on or get busy with other things. Their accounts will sit unused, their games drifting down the lists, their virtual clothes buried beneath newer trends. The platform will go on without them, filled with new names, new worlds, new ideas. But the habits they learned here, the confidence to make something, the patience to debug it, the willingness to share it, the understanding that a world is just rules and assets that someone decided to assemble, those will travel with them. They might build software or companies or works of art. They might design cities or teach students or write novels. Whatever they do, they'll have lived through a time when building and visiting entire worlds was as normal as riding a bike. That's Roblox's deepest legacy. Not any one game, not any one update, but the millions of quiet individual realizations that worlds are not only things you visit, they're things you can create. And as long as a kid somewhere is opening Studio for the first time, as long as a friend group somewhere else is booting up a new experience together, as long as an engineer is somewhere watching a graph and keeping the servers steady, this story will keep unfolding, block by block, script by script, world by world, inside a world that started with a simple question: what if anyone could build a universe of their own